Hi folks, this is Ken Benton from the North Branch Nature Center, and today I'm going to show you how to make life in a jar terrariums. These are two examples that I have already. I made these out of fancy jars with cork caps, but you don't need a fancy jar. All you need is just some jars from your recycling. We have a peanut butter jar here. This is an old salsa jar that I was able to peel the label off of. And this is what we're going to use today. It doesn't have to be glass, it can be plastic, whatever you have. It just needs to have a lid that can screw on tight. Alright? And it also needs to be able to be watertight. Alright. So, this is what you need. You need a jar. You do need some rocks. I have some rocks in here already. Just small rocks to go at the bottom. This is going to serve as a drainage layer. Alright, that's important. You need a plastic grocery bag. You need a garden trowel. Well, you don't need it, but it's helpful. You need some dirt. And you need some plants or moss. Alright? All of this I found either in my shed, recycling, or right in our lawn here. Alright? So, first thing you do, get a jar, clean off the outside. Peel the label off, get as much glue off as you can. I recommend soaking it in hot water if it's extra sticky. Next, I took the plastic bag, put the jar over top of it, and with a marker I traced the outside of the jar onto the plastic bag. And I cut it out and got this little circle piece of plastic that'll fit perfectly into my jar. Now, this is going to serve as a barrier between your soil layer and your drainage layer. Alright? That way the soil doesn't go down into the rocks. You want excess moisture from the soil layer and the plants to be able to get down to the bottom into the rocks here. Alright? So that way your plants don't get all soaking wet and start rotting. They can go down, the water can go down, get down in between the rocks, and if it dries up too much on the top part, it will evaporate up and moisten that soil and your plants. Alright? But if you have a piece of plastic blocking it completely, it's not going to get through. So what I did, I took a bamboo skewer, put the plastic on the ground, and just poked a whole bunch of holes into it. So now little water droplets can go through these little holes and drain down into the rock layer. Alright? So, put my rocks in. You only need, for a jar like this, maybe half an inch to an inch of rocks. You're going to put your plastic barrier down there. Try to put it in as nicely as you can. If you can take your bamboo skewer or a stick, you can kind of push down the sides a little bit. It's really useful. I also highly recommend getting a wide mouth jar so you can actually reach in there. It was a real pain to use this one. It's got a really narrow neck. I had to use tweezers to get down in there and move things around. It's tricky. Alright, so we got our drainage layer, we got our barrier there to hold the soil up. Now we're going to put our soil in. Put some in here. You're probably also going to get some soil creatures in here as well, so don't be surprised if after a day or two of observing your little terrarium there that you see additional life that you didn't know was in there. I'm putting a leaf in there too, just in case. You want there to be some extra organic matter in there for those soil creatures to feed on and break down. I'll fill it up. Get another half inch to an inch of soil in there. You're going to leave plenty of room at the top for your plants to grow, because they will grow. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Maybe just a couple pinches more. Alright, pack that down a little bit. You don't want to smash it down too tight. You want it a little loose, but you also don't want big gaping holes in there. All right, now time to plant the terrarium. Here's a clump of moss that I got from my yard just behind me, behind the tree here. I see maybe 2 different types of moss in here. It looks like there's a couple other plants in there too. It looks like there's some yellow sorrel. There might be a baby fern in here too. We'll see what happens as this grows. I also got this really dried, desiccated moss off the roof of my shed. You can find moss growing in the corners of the sidewalk. You can find moss growing just about anywhere. So this piece is too big to put in there, obviously, so I'm going to trim it down a little bit, tear it up a little bit. I want about half of this to serve as like a foreground, and then I'll put the other clump kind of in the back because it sits up a little higher. I'll trim out some of this back piece too. Alright, put that in there real nice. Take this clump, put it back at the back. I'm going to take my stick, my skewer, kind of poke down the back a little bit, make sure it's fitting real nicely in there. Push down those edges a little bit. Got a little gap. I'm going to rearrange a little bit. And you can put some other decorative rocks in there. Maybe you want to put a couple sticks, a piece of bark. I'm going to take this piece of bark that was just laying here, fell off of the sugar maple tree. It's got a nice little hole in it. I'm going to stick it right down to the side there for a little added decoration. Whatever soil creatures are in there, they could also, as that bark breaks down, start feeding on that. Then all I would have left to do is give it a couple spritzes of water. Maybe like a spoonful or 2 of water, drip that in there, and then we'll seal it off. Alright, and then what you'll want to do, these plants still do need sunlight, so you want to set this either on a table next to a window, or you can even set it on the windowsill itself, someplace that it can get sunlight. And you shouldn't have to do anything to this maintenance-wise for a long time. You can keep this sealed off for as long as you want. Sometimes you do get some condensation on the glass. That's okay. You can, if you put too much water in there, you can take a paper towel or something, go in and wipe the sides down. You might get some algae growing in there eventually. You might want to clean that up from time to time. And whenever you're doing any maintenance to it, you just want to make sure that if it does dry, if you have it open for too long and all that water is evaporating out, you give it another spritz or a few more drops of water and before you seal it back up. So what's going to happen is the water is going to evaporate, it's going to condensate on the glass, it's going to drip down and go down into that drainage layer too. And that's going to water the plants. And the plants are creating oxygen, they're absorbing CO2, spitting out oxygen, a little bit more CO2. And that's going to be enough oxygen for whatever little tiny soil creatures are in there. They don't need much, and the plants that are in there is going to produce enough to provide that to them. It's really fun to watch these over the weeks and months after you've produced them, after you put them together, and see what kind of creatures or plants are in there that you had no idea. So for instance, this one right here I've had for 3 or 4 weeks now. And I just had a little clump of moss from behind the tree here, and it just looked like it was moss, nothing else. And now I see some mouse-ear chickweed that's growing in there. There's some sort of fern that's growing up in there. I have no idea what it is yet. I haven't been able to identify it. And there's also a little ground vining plant called gill over the ground that's growing in here as well. And there have been some nematodes. I saw one little millipede. All sorts of stuff is popping up in this jar that I had no idea was there. I just basically took a scoopful of earth from the yard, put it in a jar, put some moss on it, and that was it. And in that little tiny space, there's so much life. It's amazing. It's really cool to watch this kind of evolve over the weeks. So, highly encourage you to try this project. These are terrariums, life in a jar. Doesn't take much. You just need a jar, from your recycling, and soil, dirt, and some moss or plants. Really easy and really fun to watch progress over the weeks. Hope you have a good one, and good luck trying this.